Okay, Mark Walsh here from Embodied Yoga Principles. Talk today a set of distinctions that may be helpful in viewing a practice. So, practice as practice, practice as bureaucracy, practice as orthodoxy, practice as gateway drug, and practice as travesty. So, a practice, whether that be Aikido or yoga or tango or anything, if we're doing something with an aim beyond the purely set of skills that it is. So in Japanese culture, they have a distinction between jitsu and do. So there's aikijitsu and aikido. So aikijitsu is a set of techniques. It might be like arm locks or wrist locks. Aikido is the path of developing oneself through those same or similar set of techniques. So that's a nice distinction right there, right? Like, am I simply involved in the techniques? Let's say it's doing a handstand in yoga, very popular right now, or learning a particular tango step, or am I using that as a path to develop myself? So for me, like a true path, a true practice has to have that do aspect. So if it's not a way of developing yourself, it's not really a practice as I would talk about it here. It's learning a technique, which is fine. Like I learned to drive, and it's a useful skill. Learning to dance, it's a skill. But I wasn't trying to develop myself as I learned to drive. Now, I might have learned a bit of patience or something along the way, but it was accidental. It wasn't the core aim of what I was doing. Now, this is key because one can get seduced by technique. So it can get I've seen a lot of Aikido could get more and more into like how strong their wrist lock is, or how much they can throw people across the room, or as I said, the one in yoga at the moment is can you do a handstand, or how athletic your asana is. So they've been seduced by the technique and they've actually gone back to the sort of jitsu form. Now that's easy to happen because technique does need to have enough complexity and challenge that it brings up some of the emotional things that it becomes a journey, right? If it was just like, I don't know, peeling a banana, like how much skill there is to that. Now, I'm sure there's someone on YouTube that's put loads of skill into that, but basically it's like, okay, there's 2 or 3 ways to do it. You can peel a banana, you're done. This is where things like tango and aikido and yoga tend to get us because they're complex. There's like a lot, like I've had like hour-long conversations about minutiae of a wrist lock, or the hand positioning in downwards dog or whatever. So that complexity can end up seducing us, and we can lose the fact that we're actually supposed to be or want to be doing a do form rather than a jitsu form. Now, if you're just doing yoga for fitness, that's okay in a way, which leads us to the next thing, which is kind of like gateway drug. So the gateway drug analogy in kind of drug theory is, if you smoke marijuana, then it's like a gateway to hard drugs. Now, it tends to be a lot of bullshit. It tends not to be particularly true, except for the fact that you meet drug dealers, But, this is a theory that's out there. Now, one way of talking about more physical, more jitsu practice is that a gateway. So someone, for example, might say, well, I went to Aikido to learn to fight, or, and then I learned that it was about me as a person, Or I started doing yoga because I wanted to be skinny and athletic and, do a handstand to show off on Instagram. And then I got into the deeper side of it. Now, I think there's some truth in this. It can certainly happen. I've seen this happen, say, with martial arts. However, we've got to be careful. What we're doing is a true, sort of more neutral gateway form, and not a travesty. So a travesty is when we sell out something of higher value for something of lower value. You can think of it, if practice is going in the direction of learning the skill of becoming what we want to be, a gateway is more neutral, a travesty is more going in the wrong direction. So what do I mean by that? Well, it depends on your aim, right? So if your aim is to, I don't know, transcend the ego, then maybe doing something which is hugely egoic is not a good idea. If your aim is to practice non-violence, then to do something violent to your own body perhaps is not a good idea. So this is what I mean by travesty. And I would look at much kind of modern yoga not just as a sort of neutral and potentially positive gateway, but actually as a travesty. And it's a strong word, and it's deliberately almost like an overly strong word. I'm being relatively provocative here as per normal, but I think we need to call it what it is and actually say, okay, does this practice really lead to other things, or does it go in the opposite direction? Now, a critical point here, what are you trying to do? So a lot of practices I see either have no aim, or they'll say, very postmodern way, well, everyone comes for a different reason. It's like, yeah, but what's the aim? What's the purpose of this thing we're doing, We're working on ourselves in what way? Or it can be very, very general. So it can be something esoteric, like trying to unify Atman with Brahma or something like that, to become one with the Godhead. And even as someone that's done 20 years of spiritual practice, meditation, yoga, blah, 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 I'm still like, what the hell does that mean? You know, a lot of the time I get glimpses of it. But for me, a more helpful model than saying, you know, any aim or this particular esoteric aim is to look in terms of skills. So I can be in a yoga class and saying, okay, so a transferable life skill I'm trying to develop, because Do, remember, it's about a life, it's not about the handstand, would be to self-regulate under pressure. Okay, so now I have that as one of the aims, one of the skill sets that I'm trying to acquire or teach students, help them acquire. How do I do that? Okay, so let's do a chair posture or warrior posture. Okay, so the first thing is to notice the fight or flight response. The next thing is to relax the breath or the forehead or the belly or whatever, and managed that fight or flight response to regulate it. I then might want some what we call bridging practices to get that into life, so it's not just stuck on the mat. Yeah, so there's an example of a skill from, say, martial arts or from yoga, which will be, you know, really good skill to transfer into life. The ability to relax under pressure, to first notice and then regulate, notice the fight flight response and be able to regulate that. Super fucking useful for almost every aspect of life. So now we're talking about something concrete, and we can actually look back at what we're doing and saying, okay, is it neutral? Is it not developing that? Is it just such an agitated, crazy martial arts or yoga practice that we're actually just building that fight-flight response? We're getting more and more like tense from the stress of it, and we're not actually learning that skill, yeah? Or is it we're learning that skill, we're intelligently transferring that into life? So a bureaucracy or an orthodoxy would be like just where it's kind of inefficient. So a lot of practice I see is not a travesty. It's not even just a neutral gateway. You know, it's pretty much pointing somewhere useful. Like most things I do, I think that people do are positive. You know, I could go to most, I'm going to go to a yoga class in Sofia, Bulgaria, where I am today. I'm sure it'll be, you know, pretty good, pretty positive. However, how efficient is it? Now, I know that's kind of a dirty word to a lot of people. You know, it sounds like very mechanical or some sort of Fordian factory, but is it doing the thing that you want, right? If you like take a medicine, you want it to have a positive impact. If I have some lunch, I want to, you know, get some nutrition and feel full and it's tasty and have a nice lunch. You know, there's a few aims in having lunch, yeah? So just asking, just like, how efficiently does this do this? Because what's tend to have happened is there's a sort of bureaucracy, there's a way in which you copy the thing your teacher's doing and their teachers and so on, without realizing why they're trying to do that. And what often happens is the sort of the subtleties of making it efficient, the reasons for that get lost, and it becomes less and less efficient over time. Like, how good is the average martial arts class for building that ability to self-regulate? I'm just staying with that as one example. Expressiveness could be another. There's loads of others. Awareness of other people, leadership. There's lots of others. But just to stay with that example, how efficient is the average martial arts or yoga class at transferring that self-regulatory skill into the rest of life? I'd say not particularly efficient generally, because of this kind of bureaucracy that's developed over time and the orthodoxy of like, this is how we do it. And it's a matter for me of saying, yeah, but why? I mean, yes, one needs a certain faith in one's teacher, but it's not a blind faith. It's like, okay, well, they've got something, and I can see that there's this, they seem pretty ethical, and it seems like their method's pretty well established. You know, this person's experienced, but also to question, to primarily go back to your own experience. Yeah, so if what we're trying to do in a Do path is develop our own skill, well, that is predicated, that's based upon our own experience. Yes, so if all we're doing is referring to an external authority as well as learning conformity, which isn't always a good thing. Yeah, yes, surrender, that can be a good thing, but we're not referring back to the primary thing that we need to work with. So my body mind, my heart body mind, is the primary thing that, as I'm filming now, that, you know, when I'm with my friends later or colleagues or whatever it is, that's the primary thing that I'm working with. So if I've been orientating to an orthodoxy, like this is the Ashtanga sequence, this is what my teacher does in Aikido or whatever, then I'm not orientating to the primary thing that I need to be aware of and use. And it could be becoming a travesty or a kind of gateway at the least, in that sense. I hope that makes sense. It's a fairly subtle but important point. So I need to be referring back to my own experience. That's the thing that is most critical, not as a sort of arrogance, well, I'll do what I want or I won't surrender to a system, but that's where the action is, and that's where I'm going to be learning things which I can take into the rest of my life. So some interesting distinctions there: gateways, travesties, bureaucracies, orthodoxies, and true practices. I'm sure this video will be almost entirely ignored, but this is like years and years of thinking, and I think if I have anything to offer, it's around this kind of stuff. So obviously in Embodied Yoga Principles, Embodied Facilitator course, we use these concepts a lot. But I think they're actually relatively straightforward and relatively critical, even if they're not very rock and roll. So hope that is useful to you.